What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be doing a little maintenance on my Pitman arm because I am still throwing codes on my dash related to my ABS system and or the wheel speed sensors. Now, a lot of times when these codes are coming up like Service Advancetrac and other ABS related fault codes, it's usually a wheel speed sensor issue, or it could be something related to your steering because these newer Super Duties have a lot of sensors and those sensors are very finicky. Now, I've already replaced one of my wheel speed sensors before when I put my lift kit on my truck. Not long after that, I ended up going back in and cleaning my wheel speed sensors, which I've already done a video on. So if you haven't watched it, I'll put a link in the description of this video to that video if you want to see how to clean your wheel speed sensors. But the codes did start to come back, and I did a little research, and I'm pretty sure I know what the problem is, and I believe it's my Pitman arm retaining nut because my steering wheel has a lot of play in it, which is not good, which is typically a problem when you lift your truck. So you got to make sure you have a very tight Pitman arm nut, because what happens is if your Pitman arm nut is too loose, you have too much play in your steering wheel, the sensors will read that your steering wheel is turning too much before your wheels are turning, and that could be throwing off sensors as well. So I ran up to the dealership, I ordered a new retaining nut. Now, you don't need to necessarily do this. You could always reuse your existing Pitman arm retaining nut, but just make sure you clean off the threads and add some red Loctite. But it is recommended that anytime you take that Pitman arm retaining nut off, let's say when you're adding a lift kit and a drop Pitman arm, you should replace the nut with a new factory nut because it has a red Loctite already built into the threads and it will grip a lot tighter. So we went ahead and picked one up. So we're gonna go ahead and change that today. Now, when it comes to accessing the nut, you sometimes have to take off your track bar, maybe move your sway bar out of the way, maybe move your steering linkage out of the way. Sometimes, in the case of my truck, you might even have to take down the track bar drop bracket, which that can all be a pain in the butt. I watched a couple people online do it the quicker, easier way, which the quick, easy way is take 3 bolts out of your steering box from the side of your frame. This allows you to move your steering box just a little bit to tilt it out of the way to get access to the nut, and this should be a lot easier for you. So that's what we're gonna do today. So without further ado, let's jump in and let's get this done. Okay, so we got the truck in the garage. So the next thing we need to do is pull off the Pitman arm nut. Now, if we come down below and take a closer look, you'll see right there, there's only a little over 2 threads showing. This Pitman arm should be up on this spleen a little bit higher, so we definitely need to get that tighter. But to access that nut, you have to have the whole track bar bracket taken off and all of that. That could be a little bit time consuming. The easiest way I've seen other people get access to this nut right here is just by loosening the 3 bolts out here. There's one here, here, and one behind your brake line bracket here. You take those 3 bolts out, that will actually loosen your steering box right here enough to where you can kind of tilt it forward a little bit to get access to that nut without having to remove everything. So again, pretty simple and easy to do. You just need a socket to take these 3 bolts out. Again, 1, 2, and there's one behind here, 3. I just gotta take this bolt out to get my bracket out of the way. If that doesn't work, because again, this is a 23 model and this is an aftermarket drop track bar bracket. If that doesn't work, then unfortunately, I will have to actually take off the track bar here and take the whole track bar bracket off. So let me try the easier way first. And if that works, I'll be right back to show you an update. So give me a minute and I'll be right back. Okay, so far everything seems to be working pretty good. So all I did was I took the 3 larger bolts using my torque wrench, and I took the 3 bolts out of the side over here, and that loosened up my steering box so that I had room below to move it. So again, using an impact wrench makes this a lot easier, but let's see how I used a 13 mil to take out the bolt for my brake line bracket, and then I used a 21 mil socket to take out these 3 bolts that hold the steering box right here on the side. So if you come down below, okay, there's my torque wrench here, and then I just have a larger 46 mil socket here that I use for Pitman arm nuts, like this. But if you come down below and look, I just used a little bit of a tie here to hold my steering linkage bar here to the front sway bar here, just to stop anything from moving. But as you can see here, I can kind of move around the steering box just enough to where I could clear my impact wrench right here to get to that nut. So now all I have to do is get the new nut put on and then torque it down nice and tight. And then once I get it torqued down the spec, gently push my steering box back up into place, get my bolts put in the side, put a little bit of Loctite on those, and we'll be good to go. Here's the new Pitman Arm retaining nut here that comes with the factory red Loctite there. So hopefully this one here will go on nice and tight and I can get it torqued down the spec. Now again, your truck model and the year of your truck, the torque specs might be different on your retaining nut, so just make sure you look those specs up online. I'll have to do the same for my truck, and then I'll go ahead and torque it down the spec after I use my impact wrench to get it nice and tight. Again, I always like to go as tight as I can on these type of retaining nuts because it's important that this is tight. I might even just add another drop of the red Loctite in those threads as well, just for a tad bit of extra security. Put a couple drops in there. We're gonna torque it down. So let me go ahead and start doing that and we'll be right back. Okay, so we're all done. We got the bolts put back in. All you gotta do is grab the linkage bar here that connects to the bottom of your Pitman arm and kind of push the steering box back up in place. I mean, we're only talking an inch or two. And then you can line up your holes, put your bolts back in, torque them down, put your bolt back in your brake line bracket here, torque that down, and you're good to go. If we come down below, you can see I got the new Pitman Arm nut put on. And now we have about 5 or 6 treads showing compared to only 2 before. So I have it on there pretty tight. We have it torqued down to 350 foot-pounds of torque. So it is a little higher on the spleens than it was before. And I do have some red Loctite on there. So hopefully this really keeps things a little bit tighter because it was a little bit loose. So that should definitely help out a lot. Steering wheel's still pretty straight there. Okay. Let's start the truck. Let's get our seatbelt on. Okay. First, let's just go for a quick little ride down the road and see how this feels. Because I did have a good bit of play in my steering wheel before. Okay, so now we're parked in the driveway, facing downhill, straight. Now, if I just kind of take the steering wheel left to right, I can feel that I only have about less than an inch of play left or right, which is way better than it was before. Before, I actually had probably over 2 inches of play left or right. So let's go ahead for a quick ride and see how it feels. But this might be the culprit because again, my steering was a little sloppy. And again, I wasn't really even paying attention to it because, you know, when you're driving a lifted truck and you feel a little bit of sloppiness in your steering wheel, you just kind of get used to it. So if it gets a little sloppier, you don't notice it. But when somebody brings it to your attention and then you actually pay attention to it, it definitely was a good bit sloppy. But for now, it feels way tighter. Again, I don't have so much play, maybe an inch tops left or right, but I already feel the tightness in my steering in probably less than an inch left or right, which before I replaced the retaining nut, I probably had easily 2 inches of play left or right, which was definitely bad. By catching the fact that my Pitman Arm retaining nut, the upper nut, the real big one, was loose. Because if you remember before, I only had roughly 2 threads showing, which is definitely not good. That right there explains why my steering wheel had so much sloppy play in it left to right, because the looseness of the nut was creating so much sloppiness in my steering wheel. The sensors were picking up that my steering was too loose because of the loose Pitman Arm nut, and that was what was causing all of my codes to fault on my dash and then go away and come back. It was periodic. So hopefully now, after pulling off the old retaining nut and putting a brand new nut on with a little extra red Loctite and really torquing it down, again, a lot more threads are showing, which is good. It shows me that that nut is really tightened up on there. That's what it needs to be. And my steering wheel feels a lot more stiff, which is definitely good. It really has very little play left or right. So right here, if I go to the right, I'm already feeling tension right there. And if I go to the left, I'm feeling tension right there. So really, maybe a half an inch to an inch left or right is where it is now. Whereas before, I probably had 2 inches left or right. So I think we might have fixed this, but we're gonna have to drive the truck for a few more days and really just see how everything holds up and see if the fault codes come back. If they don't come back, then I think we finally fixed the problem. So let me give it a few more days and I'll be right back. Okay, so it's been over a week now and I have not had any codes coming up on my dash. So I would assume by replacing and tightening up my Pitman arm retaining nut to torque, which I went a little over 350 foot-pounds of torque using a little red Loctite, that actually helped tighten up my steering wheel so I don't have as much play as I once did. So I think my loose Pitman arm nut was causing a lot of my codes on the dash. So again, if your Super Duty is throwing all kinds of codes typically related to your ABS system, you definitely want to check your wheel speed sensors, maybe by using a scanning tool in your OBD2 port and seeing if one of your wheel speed sensors is faulty. The second thing you might want to try is cleaning your wheel speed sensor, which I've already done that in a separate video, and I'll put the link to that video in the description of this video if you want to see how to clean your wheel speed sensors. And then the third thing, check your Pitman arm retaining nut and see if that's loose, because if you have a lot of play in your steering wheel, your gyroscope sensors of your steering wheel are probably going to be throwing those codes, because these sensors are going to sense that your wheel is turned way more than it should before your wheels are actually turning. So that could be throwing sensors. But I've already cleaned my wheel speed sensors not too long ago, and I've just replaced my Pitman arm retaining nut with some red Loctite and got that all tightened on the torque, and my steering is nice and tight and I don't have any more codes. So I think I finally fixed that problem. So at the end of the day, if you're throwing ABS codes on the dash of your Super Duty, I definitely recommend checking out these couple steps, because I seem to have fixed my issue by just cleaning my wheel speed sensors and replacing and tightening the Pitman arm retaining nut to tighten up my steering. But overall, everything's fixed and everything's good to go. So I hope this video helps some of you out. Do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button to like this video. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comment section and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And also do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, because it definitely helps me out and I greatly appreciate it. So that's it. I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you. Thank you. I truly appreciate all of your support. And as always, see you in the next video.